South of ancient Egypt, up the Nile River, in the lands of what is now Sudan, there once rose one of the greatest and most overlooked civilizations of the ancient world. A kingdom of black African pharaohs who built pyramids more numerous than all the pyramids of Egypt. A kingdom of gold so rich that it supplied the treasuries of the ancient world. A kingdom of fierce warriors, brilliant ironworkers, and powerful queens. A kingdom that, at the height of its power, conquered Egypt itself and ruled the entire Nile Valley, its kings sitting upon the throne of the pharaohs as the rulers of one of the most famous lands on earth. Its name was Kush, and for reasons of history, prejudice, and the long shadow of its more famous northern neighbour, it has been, for far too long, left out of the story we tell about the ancient world. Today, we are going to restore it to its rightful place. This is the entire history of the kingdom of Kush, the great black African empire of the Nile, from its earliest beginnings, through its conquest of Egypt, to its golden age, and to its eventual fall. Using advanced AI trained on the archaeology of the Nubian sites along the Nile, the Egyptian records that describe their southern neighbours and rivals, the monuments and inscriptions of the Kushite kings, and the work of the modern archaeologists who have in recent decades begun to rediscover this lost civilization, we have reconstructed the long history of Kush. It begins, like the history of Egypt itself, with the great river that gives all of this land its life, the Nile. The land of Kush lay along the Nile in the region known as Nubia, south of Egypt, in a land of desert, river, and gold. From the earliest times, the peoples of this region developed rich and sophisticated cultures, and their relationship with their powerful neighbour to the north, Egypt, was long, complex, and ever-shifting. For long stretches of history, Egypt dominated Nubia, sending armies and traders south to extract its treasures, gold above all, for which the region was famous, but also ebony, ivory, exotic animals, incense, and soldiers, for the Nubians were renowned as some of the finest archers in the ancient world. The Egyptians built fortresses and temples in Nubia and exploited its wealth for centuries. But Nubia was never simply a passive victim. Powerful native kingdoms rose in the region, and over time, as Egypt's own power waxed and waned, the balance between the two civilizations shifted back and forth. The first great Kushite kingdom centered on a city called Kerma, which flourished for centuries as a powerful independent state, a rival to Egypt, with its own distinctive culture, its massive mud brick monuments, and its rich royal burials. The deep relationship between Egypt and Kush meant that the two civilizations shared much: gods, art, writing, royal customs, and the symbols of kingship. But Kush was always its own world, with its own identity, its own rulers, and its own ambitions. And then came the moment of Kush's greatest triumph, when the kingdom of the south turned the tables on the kingdom of the north completely. Around the 8th century BC, when Egypt had fallen into a period of division, weakness, and political chaos, the kings of Kush, ruling from their city of Napata, grew strong. And they did something extraordinary. They marched north and conquered Egypt itself. The Kushite kings became the Pharaohs of Egypt, founding a dynasty of black African rulers who controlled the entire Nile Valley from deep in the heart of Africa all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. These Kushite pharaohs did not rule as foreign destroyers. They presented themselves as devout restorers of Egyptian tradition, embracing the worship of the Egyptian gods, especially the great god Amun, restoring and building temples, and ruling in the full style and ceremony of the ancient pharaohs. They saw themselves as the rightful and pious heirs of pharaonic civilization, restoring its glory after a period of decline. For roughly a century, these Nubian pharaohs ruled one of the most famous lands on earth, and their reign is remembered as a genuine renaissance of Egyptian art and culture. This was the high point of Kushite power, the kings of the south sitting upon the most ancient and prestigious throne in the world. But the glory of ruling Egypt did not last. A new and ferocious power arose in the Near East, the Assyrians, masters of a brutal and highly militarized empire, equipped with iron weapons and a terrifying army. The Assyrians invaded Egypt, and after hard fighting, they drove the Kushite pharaohs out, pushing them back south, out of Egypt, and into their Nubian homeland. The age of the Kushite pharaohs of Egypt was over. But the kingdom of Kush itself did not fall. Far from it. The The Kushites retreated to their own lands, and there, freed from the burden of ruling Egypt and absorbing important new technologies, including ironworking, they entered a new and remarkable phase of their history that would last for many centuries more. The center of the kingdom eventually shifted further south to a magnificent new capital city, Meroe. The city of Meroe and the civilization that flourished around it represents the long golden age of independent Kush. Meroe lay further south in a region with good rainfall and rich resources, well positioned for trade and, crucially, surrounded by the materials needed for ironworking. Kush became a great center of iron production, with the remains of its ironworking, the huge mounds of slag left over from the smelting, still visible at the site today, earning Meroe a reputation in the modern imagination as a kind of Birmingham of ancient Africa. Iron tools and weapons strengthened the kingdom's agriculture and its armies. Meroe grew wealthy on trade, sitting astride the routes that connected the heart of Africa to Egypt, the Red Sea, and the wider ancient world, exchanging gold, iron, ivory, ebony, exotic animals, and other African goods for the products of the Mediterranean and beyond. The Meroitic civilization developed its own distinctive culture, increasingly distinct from Egypt. The Kushites developed their own written script, the Meroitic script, to write their own language, a script that scholars can read phonetically, but whose language they still cannot fully translate, leaving much of Kush's own voice still locked away and waiting to be understood. They worshipped Egyptian gods alongside their own native deities, including a powerful lion-headed war god of their own, and they built pyramids. The pyramids of Kush are one of the most astonishing and least known wonders of the ancient world. At Meroe and other royal sites, the kings and queens of Kush were buried beneath steep-sided, narrow pyramids, smaller than the giant pyramids of Egypt but far more numerous. In fact, the land of ancient Kush contains more pyramids than all of Egypt. Hundreds of them rise from the desert sands of modern Sudan, clustered in great royal cemeteries, a forest of sharp stone peaks marking the tombs of a long line of kings and queens. Most people in the world have no idea that the country with the most pyramids on earth is not Egypt at all, but Sudan, the land of ancient Kush. These pyramids, with their distinctive steep angle and their attached chapels decorated with scenes of the afterlife, stand as silent monuments to a powerful, wealthy, and sophisticated civilization that ruled this stretch of the Nile for over 1,000 years. And Kush was remarkable for something else: the extraordinary power of its women. The kingdom of Kush, especially in its later Meroitic period, was famous for its powerful ruling queens. These queens, who bore a royal title that the Greeks and Romans rendered as Candace or Kandake, were not mere consorts but powerful rulers in their own right, who governed the kingdom, led its armies, and commanded enormous respect and authority. One of the most famous of these warrior queens led the defense of her kingdom against the armies of Rome itself. When Rome, having conquered Egypt, pushed south against Kush, the Kushites under their queen fought back fiercely, even raiding Roman territory and, in one famous incident, carrying off the head of a bronze statue of the Emperor Augustus, which they buried beneath the steps of a temple so that they could symbolically trample the Roman emperor underfoot forever. That very bronze head was rediscovered by archaeologists in modern times, exactly where the Kushites had buried it. After hard fighting, Kush and Rome made peace, with Rome recognizing the strength of the southern kingdom and choosing to trade with it rather than try to conquer it. The warrior queens of Kush had held the greatest empire of the age to a standstill. But no kingdom lasts forever, and in time, Kush declined and fell. After many centuries of greatness, the kingdom of Kush slowly weakened. The reasons are not fully understood, but likely included the decline of the trade routes on which its wealth depended, environmental pressures, the exhaustion of resources, and the rise of new powers in the region. Eventually, around the 4th century AD, the city of Meroe fell, conquered by the rising kingdom of Aksum from the highlands of what is now Ethiopia, and the long civilization of Kush came to an end. The pyramids fell silent, the script ceased to be written, the kingdom faded from memory, and in the centuries that followed, it was largely forgotten by the wider world, overshadowed in the histories written far away by its more famous neighbour to the north. For a long time, the achievements of Kush were ignored, downplayed, or even attributed to others, in part because of the racial prejudices of later eras, which were reluctant to credit a black African civilization with such greatness. But the pyramids never disappeared. The ruins waited in the sands, and in recent times, archaeologists have begun at last to rediscover and restore the true history of Kush and to give this great forgotten kingdom its proper place in the story of the human past. That was the entire history of the Kingdom of Kush, Africa's forgotten empire of the Nile. A great black African civilization that flourished for over 1,000 years, that rivaled and traded with and sometimes warred against ancient Egypt, that produced black pharaohs who conquered Egypt itself and ruled the entire Nile Valley, that built more pyramids than Egypt ever did, that mastered iron and grew rich on the gold and trade of Africa, that was ruled by some of the most powerful queens of the ancient world, and that held even mighty Rome at bay. It was, for far too long, written out of the story of the ancient world, overshadowed by Egypt and neglected by historians who should have known better. But the hundreds of pyramids still rise from the deserts of Sudan, the buried treasures still surface from the sands, and the true history of Kush is, at last, being restored. The next time someone tells you the story of the ancient world, of Egypt and Greece and Rome, remember that there was another great civilization on the Nile, a kingdom of gold and iron and pyramids and warrior queens ruling from the heart of Africa for 1,000 years, and that its name was Kush,